Hello and welcome everybody to another episode of Strickland. I'm your host, Shwin and Prez, in this episode 426. I'm joined, as always, by my co-host Prez. That is @_Presidente on Twitter. Prez, how are you doing?
I'm coming to you live with a salt-based sprinkle of COVID still in my system, but I think I am mostly out of the woods, so I'm ready to talk about draft failures.
Or successes, either one. Well, we're going to get into that. Before we do that, I do have to make a few announcements. First being that Strickland has Instagram. Check that out. That is @thestrickland on Instagram. We're posting all kinds of new content there. Strickland also has a YouTube channel where you may be watching this podcast. If you are not done so already, please hit like, subscribe to the channel, leave us a comment. That'd be a huge help to us. Strickland has merchandise, which you can find on our website at www.strict.land. There's a link that'll take you to the merchandise store. There's all kinds of cool stuff on there, like t-shirts, sweatshirts, hats, coffee mugs, water bottles, you name it, we've got it. Strickland also has a Patreon, which you can subscribe to. There are a number of different tiers. There's a $6 tier that gets you access to Pod Strickland's podcast that I host every Friday with Prez. You also get access to Takes from Obvious Bozos, our news podcast that is hosted by Andrew Steele, a.k.a. Doug, along with Derek Ladder, and you get access to the Strickland Discord where the conversation never stops, even in the off-season. There for the tiers, there's a $9 tier that gets you access to Strickland Roll, my solo pod where I rant and rave about things even more. You also get access to wonderful premium articles by Matthew Miranda, one of the best in the business, and now you get access to Strictly NFL, which you guessed it, is our news podcast that is hosted by Country and Metricos, and it is about the NFL. There are further tiers. There's a $15 tier, $30 tier, $50 tier, and another $100 tier. This comes with a variety of additional benefits, like listening on pod recordings, merchandise discounts, and even potentially co-hosting a podcast alongside yours one day. Whether you choose to subscribe or not, nothing should be possible without you. And nothing should be possible without BetOnline. BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform, your number one source for everything football. BetOnline has every stat, every matchup, and even live odds and spreads. Bet on during the games. Think you know your stuff? Get in on our $200,000 mega contest and pick 5 games against the spread every week for your chance at weekly prizes and a share of $200,000. When the game's over, head on over to our online casino and get in on a game of blackjack or poker or unwind with one of our over 150 slots games. Head to the website today to get in on the action. Bet online. The game starts here. So we're here to revisit some drafts. And looking back on the drafts from 2014 through 2019 and taking a look at picks that were of the most consequence, you could say. Some of these actually didn't have a lot of picks that were like to pick from because they mostly sucked. But yeah, I mean, there's some that have a bunch, and we can talk about all of them. So I mean, I guess we can just start with the 2014 draft. So 2014, I don't know if you did you come up with anything? What did you have?
This was an interesting one because when we say most consequential, I take it you mean number one that consequential to a franchise's trajectory, good or bad, right?
Yeah, and like I avoided like, but I think it's stupid to kill teams where it's like I'll just give you an example. I had Devin Booker as a consequential pick, but not because he dropped to 12 and these other teams passed on him, or like Donovan Mitchell because he dropped. I don't think that is a particularly good reason because they went in the ranges that they were like being discussed about. You know, like I don't think it's right to hold teams accountable.
I wouldn't penalize teams for missing them considering that's their range, but I would say those were enormously consequential for the teams that happened to. Right.
Yeah, okay, absolutely. Cool. I try not to like punish teams too much, but then there were ones where I'm like, I felt fine punishing teams for like, okay, you passed on X, and I thought X was actually great for you, and I think a lot of people thought that, and the guy you picked had
like Luka for Phoenix or whatever.
Yeah, like there's a number of red flags, but you like those are valid, and then so like successes, obviously those are a little bit easier to kind of just determine. Although like it's like kind of boring to be like, whoa, what a great pick, like the Luka one is interesting not because he ended up being good, but like more the entire kind of conditions of how he ended up in Dallas.
Right.
But like I'm not going to give. I don't know. I'm trying to think of like a number one pick here that was like, for example, the 2014 draft. I didn't put Wiggins as a consequential pick because, for a very specific reason, it didn't matter who they were picking number one that year. Once in time, we found out LeBron James was going back because that pick was whoever got drafted there was getting traded for Kevin Love. So like it didn't matter who went there. That guy, whoever it was going to get traded for Kevin Love. So I didn't have that one marked down at all. But like, there's picks that were really good picks that were kind of off the beaten path, you could say, not kind of agreed upon at the time. But yeah, that's kind of how I went about it.
Okay, that makes sense. The only other, and I mean, Andrew Wiggins would be a good example of this if he wasn't immediately destined to be traded. But like, I mean, we can talk about this later once we get to RJ Barrett. But and this is something Knicks fans have seen with RJ. When you have a top 3 pick who isn't even bad, like he's not a bust, but he doesn't deliver on.
He's just fine.
Close to top 3. Yeah, fine. If like not worse than that. Like Andrew Wiggins, like at his best, he was legit good, but mostly he was fine, if not actively harmful as a young player, right? So like that didn't matter for the Cavs. That ended up mattering for the Wolves. So to your point, like it doesn't really matter for the purposes of Cavs making that pick. I don't think it was consequential because literally, like you said, whoever they picked was getting shipped out of there. It's just a question of I don't know
if it was
so
like
I guess
Embiid
one thing
or something and he went to Minnesota.
Well, here's the question. Do you remember, because I don't actually remember this, I vaguely remember basically Andrew and Joel, who played together, being the top 2 guys with Jabari kind of in the mix and then Joel dropping because of injury. And did we ever was Minnesota like, we want Andrew, you're picking Andrew for us?
No, it was after because they picked Wiggins and then LeBron told they didn't know at the time that LeBron was coming back. They actually were like trying to clear cap space to make a run at fucking Gordon Hayward or something, if I remember correctly. But yeah, so like this was not like they didn't pick Wiggins with the
idea. So it wasn't even consequential really to Minnesota because it was whatever. They weren't pulling the strings here anyway. So yeah, in that case, yeah, Andrew Wiggins, I wouldn't really do it. Jabari is arguably consequential from the perspective of you burn a number 2 pick that is going to set your franchise back. And I don't know what we thought of the early Jabari Parker experience, but it definitely falls below expectations for a number 2 pick without even getting into Joel Embiid and other players who are really good behind him.
Well, like, I just think this was like the reason it's consequential is because Joel Embiid was picked right behind him. Like, because if you just look at the rest of this draft, it's kind of a nothing burger. Like the rest of this draft is just like it's a bunch of dudes, and you're like, okay, that's fine. Like
about half of them probably ended up better than him, than Jabari, but that's not saying much.
Yeah, like do I think, like for example, Julius Randle now has become a 3-time All-Star, 2-time All-NBA player. Like he's really, really good. But would Milwaukee really have held on to him for that long? Especially since they're going to draft Giannis the next season? Like, probably not. Like, they probably wouldn't reap the rewards of him becoming that player. Would Marcus Smart have changed their lives? Like, he'd be better, obviously, than Jabari Parker, but I don't think you can call that, like, oh my God, what a miss. And honestly, like,
and not certainly as a prospect. It wasn't like Jabari was some overrated prospect. He was a good prospect.
Yeah, and I think, like, again, like, we have to think about the draft at that time. Wiggins, Jabari, Embiid was like no question. That's the top 3. This was like this was not like nobody was like, what? Like I really like Aaron Gordon. Like I like
there was a little Dante Exum mystery juice run.
Yeah, but that's just because nobody knew that's because nobody knew like. So it's one of those things where you're like, oh, like
I know it was just one of the. I just wanted to bring it up because that doesn't really happen anymore with like the internet, but like. it was it was so fucking. I remember that part being clear, being like, oh shit, like he's like 6'5", and he's like he can do everything. He could guard all 5 positions, and
Well,
maybe he can shoot. Blah blah blah.
there's one very, very famous pick late in this draft that was of enormous consequence. We'll talk about that
All right.
briefly.
Well, going down from those guys. Yeah, we'll get there.
But
Joel,
like
obviously, a consequence.
but the Jabari thing is just crazy to me because, like, first of all, I didn't like Jabari as a prospect. I just was not into him that much. Like, there was this forever. I don't know why this happened, but there, like, any wing that could score for a little bit and was like big, immediately was like, oh, he reminds me of Melo. He reminds me of Melo. Like Tatum had this too. And with Tatum, I actually bought that a little bit more. And I mean, he's ended up being a better player than Melo. But like with Jabari, I was just like, I didn't really love his game. I did not think I didn't like his kind of shooting form in terms of projecting out to the 3-point line. His defense was forever terrible. Didn't love like his pass. Like I just didn't like him that much as a prospect. He's a good prospect, but like
He
if
was
you
like
watch,
people squinting to see Melo for
yeah,
sure. Like,
and
oh,
like
big, explosive,
right, and
body,
then like
strong.
and then like if you watched Embiid in college, like before, like I was like, okay, yeah, he got hurt, and I understand.
Nah,
And
that was wild in
he had
real
that like
time. I don't care.
he had like a very weird. He had this. I think it was like a navicular injury or something. That's what it was called. And it was like this. I remember looking it up, and I'm like, oh my god, this could be bad. But at the same time, I'm like, well, I like Wiggins. I liked. I'm not gonna lie that I liked Wiggins as a prospect. But to me, I was like, okay, well, if Cleveland's taking Wiggins, right? So he's not even on the board for you to think about. And I don't think it matters to Cleveland who they pick because whoever they picked is gone. So I'm not going to kill Cleveland for picking Wiggins over Embiid, right? But like to me, this is just like a no-brainer. Milwaukee sucked ass. They didn't have a big man worth shit. So it's not like you're like, well, we have this guy that we like. Oh, you really like fucking. They didn't even have Greg Monroe at this time, so like you didn't even have that going for you. Like they had
They had
nothing.
my guy who was the weed
Larry
smoker.
Sanders.
Yeah, my guy Larry
Yeah,
Sanders.
but like
Justice for Larry.
yeah, he was a fun player, but like he also was at that time kind of thought of more as like, is he a 5 or is he like a 4 who can't shoot? Like it was like a weird thing. But like it's just like even if you liked Sanders as a center, he just never had the potential of what Embiid did have at the time. And
Oh, for sure. I was
a
mostly
great
just
player.
joking.
And it was just it's like, and if you just think about it, right? Because Embiid doesn't play that year. He doesn't play that year. So you're still going to be awful. You're probably going to still end up wherever you ended up, right? You end up with the 15th pick somehow with Giannis and whatever. Like if you had Embiid and Giannis, I mean, like you probably run the East for. Like I know Embiid hasn't done it, like, and I do hold that against him. But I hold that against him as like, okay, but you're not Giannis, you're not Jokic, you're not on those guys' level. He's obviously still a fucking really good player. And guess what? If you got to play with Giannis, I'm probably like, man, is he the best number 2 in the league? Like that's probably the conversation about him, right? Or it's like, oh, they're a 1 and 1A. Like you can't really take. Like it'd be ridiculous. All they would need is any competent guard play, and they're just destroying the East until like now, from like 2016, 2017 until now. And I mean, that's fucking huge. That's like a massive, massive shift. And I mean, to me, this is maybe it's one of the biggest ones in the entire list that we're going to do. Like, I can't like even fathom. And then not only do you not take Embiid ends up on a conference rival in Philly. And granted, like, I don't think Milwaukee and Philly have ever even faced off in the playoffs, which is kind of crazy to think about. But like, they're still in the conference, and so like you still are affected by how they play, right? Like their record and everything, how you stack up in seeding, and it's just so crazy to think about. If you just take and if you take Embiid away, right, and he's on Milwaukee, and they take Jabari Parker, which is what they would have done. Think about like the process as a whole. They would have fucking nothing from that. They would have nothing. They would literally have nothing from all of that. It would just be like, wow, we wasted like 10 years doing absolutely nothing. This is awesome. Like, it's crazy how much of a swing that is because, yeah, I mean, if Embiid ends up in Milwaukee, then Jesus Christ. And like, the thing that Sixers fans love to say is like, oh, well, we got Embiid, and what really fucked it up was them forcing Colangelo in. And it's like, yeah, man, look, you're lucky that like that happened because like you're lucky you got Embiid because Ben Simmons ended up being a complete dud. And then by that time, Colangelo's already in the mix. He's probably doing all the same shit he did anyway. So you'd have been shit out of luck. But yeah, it's kind of crazy to think about that alternate universe.
Yeah. Their franchise would be different. The careers of a lot of executives would be different. You might not even get a process, right? Like you might not even get Daryl Morey as we know him. So
yeah, you might not. They might have had. Yeah, it might have been completely different. Do we want to do do we want to do the very consequential second round pick in this draft?
Elfrid Payton. Oh no.
Yeah.
Scrolling through.
There's one. I think you'll find him quite soon.
Oh yeah, Jokic.
Yeah, Jokic goes 41 in this draft. Can't believe he
commercial.
Yeah, can't believe he dropped. I had him fucking 2 on my board. Ridiculous. No,
I can't believe 36 teams passed on him.
Ridiculous that he lasted this long. I mean, this is just like there's nothing to really say. But I mean, look, the rest of this draft is a joke. Like you can like these are some of the headline guys. So Smart and Randall are probably the third and fourth best guys in this draft. And then after that, it's like
Aaron
LaVine.
Gordon.
Yeah, Aaron Gordon.
Aaron Gordon better than fucking LaVine, please. Come on.
Yeah. I forgot that I had already passed him. Yeah, Gordon.
I was like, damn, is there an Aaron Gordon hate agenda that I don't know?
No, I like Aaron Gordon. I'm happy for him. He found his happy place. But like, yeah, it's like so after Gordon, it's fucking Smart, Randall,
Jeremy Grant.
Yeah, Nurkic, Jeremy Grant. But this first round is like ass.
Jordan Clarkson.
Capella's one of the best guys from this draft. I guess Bogdan gets picked here, but he was a draft and stash. Like, there's just no real difference makers.
Thanasis, fun fact, coming in hot at 51.
The great Phil Jackson identified him as a prospect. Yeah, there's just the second round is atrocious. Like Dinwiddie's the second best guy after Jokic.
How did you feel about Cleanthony early? More important question.
It's funny. Like I actually liked the pick because I liked that Wichita State team and he was good on their team. But like, I mean, it's like a 34th pick. You can miss that all the time, and Phil was probably smoking.
Could have had Jokic.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that would probably be the funniest thing to kill Phil for. Can't believe this guy didn't see it in Jokic. How could he miss?
So the guy who fucking loves every post player with a huge ass misses the fucking 350-pound genius.
Let's be real. Nobody was sending him Adriatic League tape, and if they were, he's probably like, put that shit straight in spam.
Absolutely. Phil Jackson doesn't have a fucking computer that he knows how to use. Please. He doesn't have a spam folder.
All right, are we good with the 2014 draft?
I think we can close the book on that forever.
Okay, that and the 2019 draft are kind of just like, I'm like, all right, whatever, man. The 2015 draft, I will let you start this one. I don't know if you had anything here at the top.
Let me see. Oh, here's the fun fact for the listeners. I probably have said this before, but this was I was a draft fan before this, but this was the one because the Knicks had a high pick that I became a bit of a draft nut for the first time, with very strong opinions on the internet and at various, college, not even college, law school, lunchroom tables and shit. Show you how old I am. I feel like there was actually a lot of consequential ones here.
Yeah. Look, I didn't include Cat because he was literally seen like that was a no-brainer first.
Cat, I would say Okafor was constant. Okafor was and wasn't, and it's because of what you said before. Like so much of their franchise fortune was tied up in Joel in a good way that they could afford to completely light on fire a top 3 pick in a very good draft like that.
At the time, it was viewed as a very good draft anyway.
At the time, it was viewed as a very good draft.
It's actually ended up being a pretty good draft, but in
but
the
not
weirdest,
because
like,
of the top 10, right?
yeah, definitely not because of the top.
It's not like, oh, if they didn't pick fucking Jaleel, they could have picked
Yeah.
Hazonia.
No,
No. Wait, let me check my notes. Cauley Stein, no, Moutier, no, Stanley, no,
The amount
Kaminsky.
of
What
time-
ass top 10?
The amount of time I wasted arguing about Emmanuel Mudiay and D'Angelo Russell, like, I need to be examined